And she didn't miss a beat. And now, thank you, Terry. And now we'd really like to ask up the crew of Hōkūleʻa who make us so proud.
Aloha. First of all, mahalo nui to our community for all the support that you constantly give to this voyage, and especially to the ongoing process of what we try to do from the deck of the voyaging canoes. And it's always humbling for us, because we know that for the few of us that get to stand aboard the deck of Hōkūleʻa or any of our voyaging canoes, that for the 13 of us that get to be together on the deck of the canoe at a time, that we merely represent our families and our communities that we come from when we stand together on the deck of the canoe. So that in the voyage and in the process of Malama Honua, really the whole purpose of Malama Honua was to understand and to do a voyage that we could learn from, that we could continue to learn from and bring home lessons to our communities, to our islands, to help to continue to strengthen our communities. And it was really in that sense that the commitment to the voyage came at the expense of our families, came at the expense of our communities that supported us to go. But it was something that for all of us, for those that are here this evening, it's something that we were, I'm going to say for myself, in the preparation, in the preparing for the voyage itself, it was something that we knew we needed to be together. That we could not do this voyage if those of us that stood on the deck were not together, if Hawaii was not behind us. That there was really no way that we could successfully do a voyage like this. So for the time that we have tonight, really we just wanted to share a little bit about the voyage, as we're going to try and, as much as we can, share 3 years in a few minutes. But in that sense of connecting, my name is Chad Onohi Paishan. I get to be a resident of Waimea because of my wife and her family that I married into. I'm originally from the island of Oahu. I was born in an area called Papakolea and raised on the west side of Oahu in a little town called Nanakuli. But it was because of a man by the name of Clay Bertelman that became my first captain aboard Hōkūleʻa when I started to sail aboard the deck of Hōkūleʻa. And because of the lessons that I started to learn from him, and I really got to know Waimea through him. So one day he made this, I think he didn't know what he was doing when he told me, hey, if you ever want to move to Waimea, come move in with me. The next day I knew he was flying out to come home to Waimea, and I was sitting on the plane waiting for him. And he asked me, oh, where are you going? I said, you said I can move in with you. And I never left Waimea. So Waimea has been home, and many of you have been a part of this community and are a part of this community, and very proud to be from this community. So just wanted to have the rest of the crew introduce themselves before we get started.
Aloha. My name is Mike Manu, and I was born and raised on Oahu. And just like Chad, I married a beautiful woman from Waimea, and I live here now.
Aloha. Ovo Kaniela Kawaiapolo Anakalea Buckley. I am from Waimea. I graduated from Kanokaina. And I have not married a beautiful woman from Waimea yet. Not yet. Looking.
Kia aloha nui a kākou, aloha no. Ua wau no opu mai kalani brado me noho au I Waimea. Kia aloha nui no Kohala, no mauna kia, no mauna loa. No hualalai, laua o lako o Kamaehu, who many people know as Loihi, but to the Kanaka, he is Kamaehu. Aloha no to our water sources of this aina, to Ekoloa Alakahi Koha Kohau, to Huaino Lani Mau Mau, runs on the back of my grandmother's house, makes our way through Waimea, all the way down to Waiaka, Kawaili'ula, Wai'ula'ula, and eventually out into the Kaiā Kanaloa, to that place of Kauna'oa, to that place of Waiku'i, to that place of Kaewa, to that place of Puaka'ilima, to that place of Honouli, aloha no, ki aloha nui, aloha. I live in Waimea. I'm born and raised in Waimea. I'm from here. And I have had the really great privilege to be able to be raised in a community that, whose efforts, no matter what, for as far as I can remember, no matter the diversity, what made us Pili, what made us Pa'a was the ability to complete the cycle, to start something and to finish it. And so that is with the best integrity, and more especially to discipline, hard work, and with a shared vision. And so with that said, to all of you who are kupuna of this community for a generation or 2 or 3 or 4 or more, kia aloha nui to you and your kupuna. To those of you who have come and who are sharing in our collective vision of Waimea, and kohala nei, kia aloha nui to you too. And so yeah, mahalo nui, aloha.
Aloha. My name is Scotty Kanda. I'm from Honoka'a. I'm a graduate of Honoka'a High School, and I had the honor of sailing with these people. And I want to just thank everybody. If in any way that you've helped with the voyage, thank you. If just for your support, thank you very much.
So in this incident of sharing, Scotty, I'm going to talk a little bit about Scotty, because it's important for you to know also that this Honoka'a boy is also, as you can see, he's carrying a camera with him. And Scotty was part of the team that made up a group of very young Hawaiian people that started an organization called OEVTV. And Scotty is one of those photographers and one of those videographers that if you look at pictures from the voyage, most likely Scotty shot some of them. Yeah, so Scotty's kuleana on the canoe, as each one of us carry a different responsibility. And Scotty's gonna be showing you some pictures as we talk in a little bit. But Scotty's, you're on leg 1 and leg 2 first, yeah? Scotty. He was on the first 2 legs when the voyage left from Hilo, when it started from Hilo back in 2014. So Scotty sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti, and then with us from Tahiti through the Cook Islands, through to Samoa. So he had a long stretch in that first part of the voyage. But Scotty's Kuleana and the others that also got to serve on that side of the canoe was in taking pictures, much of like what you see behind us, and documenting the trip, which for us aboard the canoe was kind of a first that we had this type of coverage on the canoe. For Kaniela and for Mike, we were all part of the second leg, of the voyage, which was from Tahiti through the Cook Islands and Samoa. And then, of course, Pomai did a portion of that second leg with us. And but we're going to turn over the mic to them in a little bit so they can share with you also. But really, just by show of hands, how many of you followed the voyage? Oh, jeez. All right. So you know about the voyage. I can sit down. You guys don't need to hear it from me. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So yeah. So the girl I married from Waimea is sitting here. I'll leave this story out. I'll tell you another time. But really, in that sense that the worldwide voyage itself, Malama Honua, as you may have heard before, started some years ago in the preparation and the planning of this voyage. And the execution of it really took many, many people coming together. Polynesian Voyaging Society and the team that was home in the office coordinating everything for this movement of all these crew members in and out of countries, clearing customs, everything else, arranging airlines and everything else. It's really due to the support. And really, I think for me a lot of times, it's the support that we look for in our community. That really, truly, that we all would hope for. That we would have this type of support for anything that we do. And for us from the deck of the canoe, that's what became very apparent, that we are very fortunate to have this kind of support. So from the time that Hōkūleʻa left Hawaii in 2014 and did her first voyage, her first leg down to Tahiti, and then as she continued on her second leg from Tahiti through the Cook Islands to Samoa, and as the crew members changed out, by the end of 2014, Hōkūleʻa, along with Hikianalia, had made its way to New Zealand, to Aotearoa, where she spent the remainder of the 2014 year before getting ready to depart and continue on to Australia. And then once to Australia, you know, going along the way was visiting all these different areas, like I said earlier, that we could learn from. And all the lessons that we were learning from the communities that we were able to visit. And finding out from their communities what was important to them and how they were caring for their place that they called home. So that we could hopefully take some of those lessons and bring some of those lessons home, like I said earlier. That all of these young people that were either on the deck of the canoe or those that were greeting us on land all felt this connection to one another. That we all felt that we were able to be together on this voyage and learn from one another. It was really special in that sense that you had this passing on of this knowledge that many of us that are now considered the older ones of the voyaging family have been given this knowledge from our teachers and been able to pass on this knowledge to the next ones. And it was great to see fathers passing on knowledge to daughters, sons with uncles, and it was really in that sense that I think for myself, as being the captain for the second leg here, that Scotty's showing you some pictures of. Being able to be on this leg with other crew members that came from our island was really, all the crew members that sailed that second leg were all from, the majority, 98, I would say 98% of them were all from this island here, on both vessels. And it was really in that sense that for all of us, we all understood how special that was, that we all got to be on the canoes and got to go through all these places together because we come from this community.
Aloha again. I am the youngest crew member out of all the crews that were selected for the Worldwide Voyage. I got to go on the second leg at the age of 18. So I was on leg 2, and I was also on a transportation leg for Hōkūleʻa to sail from New Zealand back to Tahiti. One of the experiences for me that was life-changing was having my birthday on a day that we landed in Tahiti, the Tapu Tapu Atea. We sailed into Tapu Tapu Atea, and that was on my birthday. I turned 19 out there. It was a pretty great birthday. Not so many people get to have that kind of birthday. I guess for me, growing up in Waimea and learning from great people like Uncle Chad and Auntie Pumai and Mike, getting to be invited on the Worldwide Voyage is a super big milestone for me, and also for others like Leo, my sister, who also you see pictures of her all the time on here. And also, for us, it's not easy to get to that point where you can be invited onto the canoe. We had to do a lot of learning, a lot of training. But when that day comes and you get invited, you know that at that point it's not over yet, because now you also have to put what you trained for into practice. And what that is for us was what we learned with our voyaging ohana isn't the only thing that we got to learn. We also learned the values that we learned from our community and our school and the people that we surround ourselves with and the people that we know are watching us as we sail in the canoe. And that's what we have in our mind the entire time as we sail, because one of the first lessons we learn as voyagers or upcoming voyagers is that we have to have an understanding of where we come from before we can go anywhere. We have to know our place, our home, our people before we can ever dream about traveling somewhere else. And for us, we had to know and strengthen ourselves inside before we can leave. When I got the call from Cap, Uncle Chad, asking if I wanted to go, it was at first, you always dream about it, but when that dream finally comes into happening, you kind of get a little bit nervous. I actually had to talk to my family. I talked to Uncle Chad and with my family a couple of times, and had to make sure that I was ready for it. And it was a combination of everything that I got to grow up with and I had to put into action. Every day that we sailed on the canoe, every line that we ever pulled, every mile we ever steered, it was all with that thought that we wanted to make our community proud of us, because we knew that we are one individual of many people who would like to be on the canoe and sail and continue the tradition. And for us younger generations, our goal is to have more younger generations, as Uncle Chad would say, the young folk beyond the canoe, have more of us jumping in the ocean, having a connection with the sea and other places, and realizing that the ocean doesn't divide us, as everybody knows this, right? The ocean is what connects us. And I have family in Tahiti, I have family in New Zealand, I have family in Rarotonga. Now I have a much bigger family and a much larger canoe that I think about. Now it's not only about Waimea do I have to make proud, I also have to keep in mind that there's people in other places of the world that I call my family as well. That's just a little snippet of me. Sorry. Now, I'll pass the mic on.
Aloha. Although I was born and raised on Oahu, I moved here in 1994 to help build Makali'i, and was lucky enough to sail her to Tahiti in her maiden voyage. For us as voyagers and on this leg and on this Malama Honua, I learned a lot, and really it made us all think about our environment and our nature and how we're taking care of it. What is the condition of the ocean right now? What are the conditions of reefs around our island right now? What is the condition of the air? There's a lot of things that we have to get better at. And as we went around to different communities throughout Polynesia, it was very evident that they are very aware of what's going on as far as sea level rise and losing their islands and dealing with pollution and other things. And you know, just like on the canoe, we all have to come together and support each other. And if we can do that, we can make improvements to the conditions here on our islands, here in Hawaii. You know, Hawaiians have been here over 2,000 years, and they figured it out. They figured out what fish not to eat at certain times. They figured out how to control water. They figured out how to make multiple uses of the water. So our ancestors and our families, they know what to do. And if we take a little bit of these lessons from, one example is the kapu system on reef fish. If we just did that, and it's all written down, and we know how to do it, and we've done it before. So if we start to implement plans that can improve the conditions of our islands, that's the only way that we get to continue to the next generations, to have a good aina that is healthy, a good ocean that is healthy, and a good community that is healthy. So for us, it's all about working together. And for this Waimea community, I know you supported a lot of crew members, whether you know it or not. And all of us are very honored and very proud to sail on voyaging canoes. And our biggest hope is that we get to give this to the next generation and instill the importance of taking care of things here on our islands and throughout the world. Mahalo.
You know, Kaniela and Mike and I, like I said earlier, we were part of this leg going through the Pacific. As the canoe left out of the Pacific, once past Australia and then went over into Indonesia, through Mauritius, and then headed to South Africa. Originally, the original part of the voyage was supposed to go up through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, into the Mediterranean. But early on in the voyage, in the planning side, at that time, piracy was in the news a lot. And so we shifted the whole sail plan to try and stay out of that. In the Somalia area was where the original sail plan was to go through. And so that's when we decided to head south, around the bottom of South Africa, this part of the lake. But in doing that, we understood that we needed to deal with weather and oceans that we had never sailed in before. It would be the first time that Hōkūleʻa was going in. And it would be the first time for the canoe that was to be our escort vessel, also Hikianalia. But as we were sailing through the Pacific, we already noted that there were some things with Hikianalia that possibly would, because of her limit, because she has no fossil fuel, Hikianalia has motors mounted in her hulls, but they're all solar powered. So the amount of energy that it takes to charge the batteries to run the motors would possibly put us in a zone of places that we might be worried about getting into trouble. So as Kaniela mentioned, while in New Zealand, we decided to send Hikianalia home. And we got another vessel that happened to be in New Zealand at the same time, called the Gershon II. And the Gershon II actually escorted Hōkūleʻa in 1995. And they happened to be in New Zealand, and of all things, they were looking to sail around the world. How those things happen. So Gershon 2 ended up becoming the escort vessel from New Zealand and continued on to the west with Hōkūleʻa, while Hikianalia turned around and with Kaniela and the rest of the crew sailed from New Zealand back to Tahiti, then back home here to Hawaii. And as Hikianalia was home here in Hawaii, it continued to sail around the state here to continue Malama Honua. As Hōkūleʻa and Gershon 2 continued west, like I said, eventually rounding South Africa and being able to stop in all the communities there, and also then continuing across the Atlantic to Brazil, and then eventually from Brazil heading up through the Virgin Islands, making a brief stop in Cuba, and then to Florida, and really to go up to the East Coast, where I'm going to ask Pomai to talk about, because Pomai happened to be on the leg that took the canoe into New York City. You want to do everything? Okay. So it's just in that sense that for the canoe, when it got to New York City and the East Coast, it was really connecting with also the native tribes that are along the continental U.S. on the eastern seaboard, and all the communities, because we ended up finding out that there's a lot of Hawaiians that even live on the East Coast of the United States, as well as the West Coast and everywhere else. So it's really in that sense that for the canoe being able to spend time in all these communities that had traveled from New York up into Boston, up into Canada, Nova Scotia, the canoe continued up through the Great Lakes and then eventually came back down and made its way through the bottom, back through Florida, and then eventually coming back through the Panama Canal. Yeah, once she made it back through the Panama Canal, then she was back into the Pacific, and then Hōkūleʻa continued on. That last year of the voyage was really, this final year of the voyage was coming through the Panama Canal, then to Rapa Nui, to Easter Island, and then from there making touching base in Pitcairn, and then from Pitcairn to the Marquesas, and then from the Marquesas back to Tahiti. And when we returned to Tahiti, we actually went back to a place that we had visited on the second leg, on the island of Raiatea. There's a marae, or a heiau, if you would, called Taputapuatea. And Taputapuatea, in tradition, was a place that many voyaging canoes had left from in ancient times. So when Hōkūleʻa had returned, when we took Hōkūleʻa through in 2014, they asked us to take a couple of the pohaku, or rocks, from Taputapuatea with us on the voyage, and then to bring them back before we returned home to Hawaii. So once Hōkūleʻa, and by this time Hikianalia had sailed back from Hawaii back to Tahiti, and we took the canoes along with Gershon 2 back to Taputapuatea to close the ceremonies there, and to close that portion of the voyage, and then to return those pohaku to Raiatea and to Taputapuatea. Upon completing that portion, the canoes returned to Tahiti Nui before the final leg of the voyage home. And on that final leg of the voyage home, it's really, the call went out from Nainoa to two young women that this community raised. And those two young women were to be the leadership to bring Hōkūleʻa home. And I always kid my wife about it. And I always tell her she's the real life Moana. Moana Motunui. But along with Kaiulani Murphy and the Murphy Ohana, Kaiulani was asked to be the navigator for Hōkūleʻa, and basically to be the eyes of Hōkūleʻa, to guide Hōkūleʻa home on this last leg, and Pomai was asked to be the captain of Hōkūleʻa. And really, for those of us that sit in the leadership for our voyaging canoes and our voyaging ohana here in Hawaii, it only made sense that they be the ones to do it. Because for many of us, we've watched them over the years, we've sailed with them over the years, we've trained them over the years. I knew that it was time for them to take their place. So here's Captain Pomai Berleman.
That was well deserved. In talking about the East Coast, and I guess in what I have to share with you, I'm gonna search for 3 pieces of aha, satiable moments that really sum up Malama Honua for me. One of them is I was able to join the canoe in New York. If you're from New York, I really like that place. It has an amazing energy about it, and you gotta go with it. And if you don't go with it, oh brah. Yeah, so I really like New York. I was there for like 10 days, but I loved it. But one of the things that I asked everybody in New York as the canoes were getting ready to move and how everything was going in that planning, and then when the canoe had gone all the way up to Boston and Nova Scotia and then back, I would ask everybody, how was your trip? What was it like? How was it? Was it awesome? How did it go? And 3 people, separate conversations, separate legs of that particular movement up the eastern seaboard said what they were most impressed with and by, and what really caught them was the First Nations people. And what was amazing to them was that the First Nations people had expressed to them that for the first time there was an entity or a group of people or a body of people who had come to them and asked permission to enter their aina, who had asked permission to enter their land, who had asked permission to be a part of their community for but a short time. And they were very, very moved is not even the right words for that. Not even the right words. But what I do know is from those exchanges and those conversations with my friends, with my family, that was heartfelt. And that will be a memory for them for the rest of their lives. It's a memory for me already, but it's a memory for them because they stood face to face, alo I alo, heart to heart, with kupuna, with individuals who, for generations, have potentially been waiting just for an ask. Oh, that's kind of amazing, huh? It's kind of profound, actually, if you think about it. When I got to New York, Manhattan, traditional name is Manahaka. And I'm just going to ask us to think about our own potential of mana. What is that word? Some of us know it, some of us don't. But I think we all do. We've been living here long enough. Just the word mana itself. Manahaka is the name of the place. For the first time in 4 generations, the people traveled by canoe that particular day with an impending storm coming, paddling across the Hudson River from New Jersey to come and greet the canoe. The last time some of them had been there by canoe was when they were asked to leave that space of Manahaka because it was going to become the fort. That was powerful. That was amazing. So again, as the First Nations people, they were very, 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 very honored and felt like the canoe that we all collectively of Hawaii intentionalized and helped to get on her way and underway, had called them back across the river. They stayed with us for only 2 hours in a day of ceremony that was going to last 9 hours. Beautiful ceremony. And after they were finished, with the ceremonial parts of their particular sharing. They went back to their little canoe, like our 6-man. I know some of you guys have been paddling for years. 2 of them, one of them was a dugout. And they stood on the pier and they chanted for the first time in an area that they probably hadn't chanted in generations. And they sang a song that lasted about 6 minutes. And it filled the air and it permeated every part, and potentially, in my hope and my estimation, every single window that I could see from every skyscraper that I was looking up at. That is beautiful. The second thing that I would like to share that I gleaned from this particular voyage of Malama Honua is the Rahui system that I was able to experience with Mike and Scotty and Kaniala and Chad and everybody else that was on Lake 2, and especially the community there. It's on the island of Huahine in Tahiti. And when we were there, we learned from these people in Huahine that there's this system called Rahui. Can everybody say Rahui? Rahui. So like us, it's like to bring everybody together to gather to bring a council together. Their Rahui system is their system of taking care of their own place. So there is no government agency that tells them how to malama their aina, because they've been able to transition out of that. Small community still, like Puoko, Kauai. Maybe a little bit bigger if we start to add on some of the communities that are coming up now. But in one sense, this is how it goes. If you fish for fish that is not in season, guess what they do? They take your fishing stuff. They take all your tools, your boat, and all your tools for fishing. And you can fish when everybody else can once the kapu system is pau. So when the kapu is done and it's time to go fish, everybody's going to go first. And they're not saying you cannot go feed your family. They're just saying you're going to start a little bit later. Makes sense. And the cool thing is, the same thing happens up Mauka. If you hunt for or gather for things that are not of that season or of that current cycle, and it happens to be that the kanaka now, because it's not just 1 or 2 people trying to manage, the kanaka are helping to manage. And I cannot tell you all the details of that. We wasn't there that long. But same thing. Your crossbow or your pahi or your guns are acquired for a time until it's time for you to ingest that and know that and understand the importance of that, and then eventually continue to sustain and feed your family. So that was pretty amazing, I thought. And it was really neat to be able to see how important that was to them and how important it was to me. And I can honestly say, I remember we were sitting on the canoe one night. Kaniala was actually playing the guitar. He's great at ad-libbing and making up songs on the spot. And he was doing that, and we were all sitting on the canoe, and we heard, Rah! It was the rain coming on the valley, sweeping through, and it came right over the top of all of us, and we all scattered like rats, I swear. Had 3 of us in one hole trying to figure out how to be there, wondering if it's going to pass. And it made me think about Waimea that night. And what I thought about Waimea was, I grew up in Kuhio Village, Hawaiian Homes. Every day I got to walk to school, ride my bike to school, Waimea school, this school. I look at Pu'ohu. I look at Mauna Kea, but Pu'ohu, in all of my life, has always been covered with trees. To a certain elevation, Yanakala, to a certain elevation. And then, when I grew up, as I started to grow up, I worked at Halakea, Bill White. I worked there 11 years. Part of my job was to exercise the horses. And the O'Keefes lived up that way, and I was able to ride all the back trails to that. And what did I see all the time was the trees. And it always stuck in my mind that that's who Waimea is. Waimea is trees. We are trees. That's who we are. Because we're products of our environment. That's who I am, because I'm a product of my environment. And I remember thinking that night, I wonder what it would be like, because what it would be like to hear when I'm 70 or 80 years old, the rain coming through that forest that we're going to continue to build. Because not all of our aina has trees. Some of it does, but they all don't have that. And what it'll be like for my kids, my nieces, my nephews, to wake up 50 years from now, looking out that same, or walk, they're not going to walk to, I mean, school, they're walking to canoe, but but look out their window and see the same trees. How amazing would that be? And so for me, that's what I thought about that night, was about knowing that my community has a na'au to know that we are trees, and that if we are trees, then we are water. And if we're trees and water, then we know how to malamara and how to continuously create the water cycle in our communities. That our job, the rain follows the forest, is to always make sure that Waimea, in the South Kohala district or Kohala Vaho, get trees. That's the second lesson from my trip. The third lesson, or the third piece of poke, I guess, that I'd like to share with you is, first and foremost, I'm grateful to all of my teachers, because they're all not va'a practitioners or traditionalists. They're traditionalists from many, 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 many places and many backgrounds and walks of life. Many of them are ranchers, who I also knew as ocean men. They had dual function and purpose, and I'm sure so many more in my life. But I'm grateful to Chad, and to Uncle Shorty, and to Nainoa, and to Bruce, and to Kalepa for trusting in us to be able to do this leg home. So to the room, I bring to all of you Kaiulani Murphy, who is my tita. And I tell all of you of Waimea, I wouldn't have done it without her. That I was on the canoe with her in 2000 when she made her first trip from Tahiti to Hawaii. And at that time, she was already learning to become the eyes of the canoe. And Chad and I sailed with her again in 2007 when we took Maisu, when they sailed Maisu, into Micronesia, Alengano Maisu, that canoe that this community again built and gave to Papa Mau and his ohana. And then I got on the canoe with her from Yap and sailed with her up to Itoman, Okinawa, the islands of Ryukyu. And again, she and Chad held the line for us on that leg. So what I learned is that from the two of us being asked, along with the 11 others that were with us on Hōkūleʻa, and the 15 that was on Hikianalia, of which Scotty was on. When I looked at and I analyzed, because I really did a lot of analyzing, it took a long time for me to say yes. It took a long time for the two of us to say yes, and we said yes together. What I analyzed and what I got out of my own personal analyzation of what I was looking at was that, like Kaniala said, we come from an amazing community. Rooted in no BS, rooted in get the work done, rooted in have plenty of heart and compassion for what you do, but control that. And know why you're doing the things that you do. And that you're not gonna go if you really cannot say, yeah, I can do this. And you're not gonna go if you're not really sure if your community got your back. And I think that's so much bigger and so much more grand than saying yes to go to captain or to navigate this leg home. And so, for me, the last three would be, again, a gesture of gratitude and thanks to all of those who did say yes when we asked. John knows what I mean. Because you can be asked and you can say yes, but how you know anybody gonna follow you? And that was my fear. And so with that said, I have nothing but gratitude for this community that helped me to become a kumula'au, for this community of people that mimics the environment that it comes from, that recognizes how important our environment is, that we're willing to stand up and compassionately tell somebody, brother, not this season, what you doing? You gotta go put the bugger away. Or from a community who recognizes and understands that people who have longevity and generations deserve to be asked. My community understands that, because that's how we operate. Many of you I've seen growing up. I've watched you grow up. I know I was a little punk before, because I remember. But I say to Waimea, to this place, to all of the mauna that take care of us, and to all of you, mahalo nui. Thank you very much for supporting us and for loving us. We felt it all the way. And whatever our personal beliefs about Malama Honua is that. But collectively, Waimea in many ways has awoma that kuleana of Malama Honua for a long time. But we still have work to do. Mahalo.
Sorry. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to put it out there that by the time the canoe was in New York, which was already a year and a half before the end of the voyage, we already started talking about, okay, now what we're going to do when the voyage is done. What about what we're going to do after? So right now, the canoe is planning to do a statewide sail. Pomai and I will be meeting with leadership this weekend to plan it out. So the canoe will be going to each one of the islands to spend time in the communities and share the stories from the deck of the canoe. So Hōkūleʻa at some point will be here on our island. She will be within Kauai, down in Keoho, in Hilo, in different areas to share those stories again with the community. And as we get to that point to know when that will be, we'll definitely let everyone know, so that whatever you're able to come, we'll let the community association know so they can get the word out that please do come down to the deck of Hōkūleʻa and stand on her and let her tell her own story. You know, it's in 1976 when Hōkūleʻa made her first voyage with Mao and the other men that stood on the deck of the canoe with her. They never realized that the canoe would continue voyaging after 1976. That was never part of the plan. That now, some 41 years later, Hōkūleʻa being the only voyaging canoe in 1976, she is now the mother of 22 voyaging canoes. And the family of those voyaging canoes have grown. And her legacy continues on. It's a promise that all of us made, that we all committed to in coming to the canoe. A canoe being built here in Waimea called Makali'i by Pomai's father, Clay. The building of Makali'i specifically was to pass on those lessons from the deck of this canoe so that there could be a canoe here in our community. And Makali'i was that canoe that was built right down the road here in Waimea, in the Quonset hut that was donated by Parker Ranch at the time. The green Quonset hut, and now there's just a cement slab that sits there, is where Makali'i was built. And now her story too, 22 years later, she continues to do likewise, to continue the same that we learned from the deck of Hōkūleʻa with our community for Makali'i to be a floating classroom. We're planning Makali'i's next voyage in 2019 to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. We just completed a 2-year dry dock and getting her totally ready for the next 30 years. By the help of these people here and many of our community people that have come to put their hands on the canoe. And the reason that we do this, basically, is to pass it on, like Pomai said, was for the next that will come after us. And it's really in that sense that for us, from the deck of Hōkūleʻa, Makali'i, o Hanava'a, again, mahalo nui. I'm not sure, Auntie Patty, how much time we got, but if anybody has questions, they'll be more than happy to answer them for you. This box here, our next voyage with Makali'i, we're planning to go to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands in the summer of 2019. What we're looking to do in stepping forward in understanding what it is, the story goes some years ago in the garden that's here in Mala'ai, Waimea School. They had asked me to come in to speak about the canoe. And the only way I could relate to a school garden and a canoe was talking about food. I said, if our ancestors were able to sail their voyaging canoes here before KTA, Foodland, Safeway, Costco, Sack and Save, before those places, and that they were able to be successful and sustain themselves for generations before those stores came into existence, is it even vaguely possible that we could provision one canoe for one voyage from our aina? And all the school gardeners at that time thought, wow, that's a great idea. And they invited me back 6 months later to talk again, and I asked them the same thing again. And they kind of got to the point to say, I guess he's serious. And so what we're looking at doing is actually provisioning Makali'i for this next voyage from our aina. The school garden network here on our island has committed to it. We've got 10 schools that have committed to it. We've got a number of community organizations that have committed to us. So what's in here is food that's already being made and canned. So some of you probably are accustomed to seeing food that's been bottled or canned. For some of our young people, it's a new thing. We sent some of this off with Hiki Analia before they left Hawaii to sail back to Tahiti. And we sent them with this food. And a lot of these things that come out of the gardens, pickled eggplant, smoked meat, smoked sausage, all these foods that are being canned in a way that we can do this ourselves. Because the hopes is, if we're able to provision a canoe that has 14 crew members for 30 days, why can't we feed our families? Why wouldn't we be able to feed our communities? If we can provision a voyaging canoe for 14 people, 3 meals a day, and they're healthy, why couldn't we do that for our community? Why can't we feed our people that need? So it's just another idea of taking this voyage to another place. Because many of our voyages, most of our food is bought from a store and is packed on the canoe. So with Makali'i, this is our next step that we're looking to do, is start to provision our canoe. And this is something that's happening on this island specifically. But it's starting to catch on with the rest of our voyaging family the more that we're going out and telling them about it. Because the possibilities for them to do the same thing on their islands is very much real. So yes, this is part of our foods that we'll be taking. Oh, yes. Yeah, Saturday. Yes. Saturday, because now that she's back in the water, every, third Saturday, there's a crew training. So the crew was out training that day, and then they're getting towed in at the end of the day to get back on the water. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Yes.
Where can we make a donation to
To Nakalai Va'a is the name of our organization. And like was said earlier, we're a 501c3 federally recognized, so you can write it off. We're a nonprofit organization as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. How different is it navigating the southern hemisphere from the northern hemisphere? For us, because we live up here in the northern hemisphere, it's very different for us because everything's totally tilted the opposite way. So it takes us a little while to get adjusted, to recognize things again. But it's no different from our families in the South Pacific. When they come up here to navigate, it takes them to same thing, because we just become very accustomed to our home and what we see. But it's very much those opportunities that we need to continue to voyage, so that the next ones who will take our place can do it. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Where was most of the pollution? In the Pacific. Well, it's at different, at different levels, but a lot of times because in the Pacific, everything kind of ends up in a bigger way, so you see it more in different areas, whether you're down in the South Pacific as well, you see it, but yeah, for us, most of the time is the Pacific. Yeah. Yeah, well, same thing. That's where we saw most of it. Yeah. Any other questions? Mahalo nui. Mahalo again to Waimea Community Association for having us. Aloha no.